Good morning, friends. This is Mrs. Wyatt, and today we're going to do a fluency poem together and do some practice with our fluency. So we're going to start off by looking at our scale. Our goal to level 3 is that we can read a first grade text with expression and our reading sounds smooth. We've talked with our teachers all year long about being a fluent reader and how reading fluently means that we read smooth like a skateboard, not like a robot. So the poem I have to share with you today goes along with some of the things we've been learning about this week as we've been learning about planets and space, and it is called Sunflakes by Frank Ash. Now, that title sounds a little funny to me, sunflakes. Have you ever heard of a sunflake? No, of course we haven't, but we have heard of snowflakes. So in this poem, one thing we're going to notice, one thing we're going to watch for is how the author uses sun and snow together in the poem. So when we are practicing with our fluent reading and reading smoothly, one thing that we know makes us a more fluent reader is when we pay close attention to the punctuation marks. The punctuation marks tell us what to do with our voice. So before I even start to read the poem and dive into the words, I'm going to preview the punctuation marks. In a poem, a lot of times there are punctuation marks at the end of a line, but not always. So I see a comma here. Draw that comma in the air. It's like a period with a tail, right? I see another comma and another comma and another comma. And commas tell us to slow down and pause. It's not like a period. It's not a stop. It tells us to slow down and pause. I see a period here, and I know that a period tells us to stop. That's the end of our idea. I also see a hyphen here, and that's a punctuation mark we don't always see, but when we see a hyphen, it kind of does the same thing as a comma. It tells us to pause and maybe take a little bit longer pause before we go to the next line. So now that I've previewed all of my punctuation marks, I know what I'm going to do with my voice at the end of these lines. I'm going to have a lot of pauses, but then I also have some spots where I don't stop or pause at the end of the line. There's no punctuation there, so I will go right into the next line when I get to that part of the poem. Our punctuation marks give us a big hint about what to do with our voices. So now I'm ready to read Sunflakes by Frank Ash. And I'm going to be sending a copy of this poem to your grown-ups. Maybe they will print it out for you. Maybe you can just look at it at the screen at a different time to help you practice with your fluency. But for now, you can read along with me. If sunlight fell like snowflakes, gleaming yellow and so bright, we could build a sunman. We could have a sunball fight. We could watch the sunflakes drifting in the sky. We could go sleighing in the middle of July. Through sundrifts and sunbanks, we could ride a sunmobile. And we could touch sunflakes. I wonder how they'd feel. All right, so we finished reading the poem one time, and we did a great job with our fluent reading on that first time. We really paid attention to our punctuation marks. We knew the words when we were reading, but we know one thing that helps us to be a more fluent reader is to go back to the text and read it again, to dive in and really look at the words in the text and think about what we're reading. So I want to look at some of the words in this text and think about what we're reading together. We said before we started that the title of this poem even was just kind of funny to us, Sunflakes. Well, there's no such thing as sunflakes, but we do know about snowflakes. And in the first sentence, the author says, if sunlight fell like snowflakes, and he uses that word if. So in the whole rest of the poem, he's telling us what we could do if instead of snowflakes, you know how snowflakes fall one at a time, if sunlight came down that way, like one little drip drop at a time, instead of in big beams like it does in real life. So all throughout the poem, the author uses some words that we would usually use to talk about snow but he makes them into sun. So I'm going to go through and look for some of those words and see if I can think about what's the word that it's replacing. So the first one I see is a sunman. We could build a sunman. Well, what word would that be replacing, everybody? Of course, it's replacing snowman. He says we could have a sunball fight. Well, what word would that be replacing? Snowball fight. He says we could watch the sunflakes. What word is that replacing? Snowflakes. We could go sleighing in the middle of July through sundrifts. What word does that replace? Snowdrifts. And sunbanks. What does that replace? Snowbanks. We could ride a sunmobile. What does that replace? Snowmobile. And we could touch sunflakes. And that, of course, replaces snowflakes. So I'm going to read the poem 2 more times for you. This time while I'm reading, I want you to just close your eyes and kind of picture what would you see if you were watching these sunflakes. What would it look like? If sunlight fell like snowflakes, gleaming yellow and so bright, we could build a sunman. We could have a sunball fight. We could watch the sunflakes drifting in the sky. We could go sleighing in the middle of July. Through sundrifts and sunbanks, we could ride a sunmobile, and we could touch sunflakes. I wonder how they'd feel. All right. So this is our fluency poem for this week, and I hope that you will be able to look at this poem on your grown-up's device or on your device. I'm sending out the file, and you can practice reading it yourself. I have an assignment for you to do with this poem in your notebook. So we're going to turn to a new page in our notebook. I'm going to use my whiteboard if you don't mind. We're going to write the date up at the top. Okay, April 17th, 2020. And then I want you to answer this question for me. And you don't have to write the question. You're just going to write your answer in a sentence. How would a sunflake feel? Because the author says, I wonder how they'd feel. Well, we're going to imagine, how would it feel? We're going to write a sentence. I want you to use 3 describing words for a sunflake. So your sentence is going to start off, a sunflake would feel. I'm going to start with a capital letter because that's the beginning of my sentence. A sunflake would feel, and then you're going to, after you write all these words yourself, you're going to finish the sentence by telling me 3 describing words. And you're going to end your sentence with a period. So maybe I'm thinking a sunflake would feel hot, burning, and sharp. Maybe I'm thinking a sunflake would feel warm, cozy, and toasty. You get to decide what your words are going to be when you write your sentence. All right, friends, thank you for joining me today for our fluency lesson. I encourage you to practice your poem at home. We're working on making sure we can read the words smooth like a skateboard, not like a robot.